All right. Good morning and happy Thursday. Thank you for being here. We are on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast, #1 internet singles talk network. And your health vibes with Elana. I'm your host, Elana. Oh, wow. With your health vibes with Elana. My journey is to raise your heart, body, and soul vibes to the next level so you can transform your life today. And today we have the one, the only, Annie. And I'm so excited for you to be here today. We will be exploring the feminine and the masculine. So, everybody, I would like to give a warm welcome to Annie. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited for our talk today.
Wow, what a welcome. Thank you.
I know it's a little in your face.
I love it. I love it. You're giving me energy. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Annie, could you tell the world a little bit about you and who you are? I'm so excited for the world to know you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Annie Nogg. I'm originally from the Midwest
Woo woo.
and born and raised. Um, and now I'm in California. I've been here for a long time. I've got into career and life coaching. Many things led me to career and life coaching. But I'm living in the Bay Area. I've got these two little kids. They're a really big part of my life now. They're not that little, actually. Um, and here, I feel very lucky to be in a job that feels more like a vocation. I think it's why I'm here. I think it's a huge part anyway of why I'm here. And I love to get to work with people so closely.
I love that. So, is this something that you've always wanted to do? You know, growing up, people are always like, what do you want to do? Was this something that you came into, something you've always done? Could you maybe tell us a story of kind of how you evolved into this beautiful role that you are in right now?
Sure. So I think actually from a very young age, like 8 or 9, I thought I wanted to be a therapist. And it was because I noticed that there were some mental health issues in my nuclear family and my more extended family. So I realized from an early age, without mental health, you don't have much of anything.
Definitely.
So I thought I wanted to be a therapist all the way up until freshman year of college, Psych 101. It was a huge weed out class. And it hit me like a bag of bricks that as much as I respect the field, I was not cut out for it. I had
Right.
really delicate sensibilities always. And I knew I wasn't cut out to be with people at their most traumatic moments.
Right.
So I studied this thing called very related, but I studied this thing called human development and family studies.
Ooh.
And then the few jobs I had right after college led me here, I would say. I taught English as a foreign language, and that was an interesting seed because I was working with peers and we were talking about them using language as a vehicle. So that I already knew that I liked that.
Ooh. Wait,
And
can
then
you say again the language of like, can you elaborate a little bit on that with the language of vehicle a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So, like, unlike math or history or science, we weren't talking about a subject, we were practicing English.
Ooh, I like
And s
that. I think so many times we're told you have to do the right, like math, science, this, that, and having other options to explore the voice and what you want is really a good thing as well.
Yeah, and they were Spanish speaking and living in Costa Rica, and so
Ooh.
if they could get really good at English, it would really help their career
Mhm.
options,
Oh,
and
I
so
love
that's why they were there. And yeah, I got to learn about their dreams and their desires and their hopes because we were practicing English and practicing talking, so that was fun, very fun. Moved to San Francisco, got into nonprofits. And most recently, before I got into this, I worked at a workforce development nonprofit. So helping job seekers find and keep employment. I loved it until I didn't. Like, that's how a lot of jobs seem to go. And I was working with people on resumes and cover letters, but people were coming in with these big philosophical questions like, who am I? Why am I here? And I got really intrigued by those questions and wanted to support people kind of underneath the logistical job search questions.
Oh, I love that. Digging deeper. It's more than just the surface level, kind of I feel like you like what their soul wants, not what is
Yes.
identified as like what should be.
Yes. And less about how do I present myself? How do I get them to pick me? Right.
Yes.
And more
Yeah.
that exactly.
Oh, I love that. And so then with all that, changing the tune of little kind of what you do, where did that lead to after realizing like, maybe this isn't the path or road that I want to take? What led you to do more and explore what you really truly felt passionate about?
Well, I had definitely hit a crossroads myself, and I was having a really hard time figuring out some of my own life questions to the point where I remember like crying in the shower. Like I didn't need a therapist, but I needed someone to help me figure out. I was curious, do I go back to grad school? Do we want to leave the Bay Area? I was already with my husband by then. When do I want to have kids? Because I thought that I did want to have kids. And what's the order of all of that? I think it was all of that happening at once that I felt
Mhm.
like I needed some support. And so a friend of mine said, I just went to a workshop led by a life coach. Maybe you should talk to her. And I said, what's a life coach? And so after, and so we had probably only 3 sessions. I think that's all I could afford at the moment, but it was so helpful. And so I think from that point on, I put it in my back pocket as like, I think I might want to do that at some point. And then we started having kids, and I was working at a nonprofit. I wasn't exactly, like, doing that well financially at my job, but I
Right.
loved it. But I knew that if I stayed there to grow, I would have to get into things I didn't like supervising a team and applying for funding and budgets and spreadsheets, and that is not, the strength of my brain. And so and I
It's
like
something
client
you can,
work.
I think so many times kind of leading in with all this, we want to take on that, like more, role and what energy, masculine, feminine energy showing up. And
Right.
with all that, showing that you didn't want, what kind of energy was it bringing and making you, feel like with that all?
Yes. And I'm glad you're bringing in the masculine feminine because I did love that feminine energy of getting to connect really deeply with others.
Yeah, when I think that really shows up, and sometimes in these work environments, I feel we have to put on more of like sometimes a different role, like the more masculine, like showing up and boom, 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 go, 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 and
Yes.
wanting a little bit softer kind of appeal, to it all.
Yes.
Can you relate or how with your clients showing up, do you notice different things of what kind of energy or, dealing with them, how to go along their life?
That's a really interesting question. Yes, I in coaching, there's this terminology about if you imagine a spectrum and on one side is doing, which I think is more typically masculine, and on one side is being, which is
Ooh.
more typically feminine. The goal of coaching is to help people have a foot in both.
Mm.
Usually, it doesn't matter if they're men or women. When
Right.
people come, they've got a certain energy. There are certain people who are like, go, 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 do, 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 checking everything off the list. What are we going to do? How are we going to get this done? And there are certain people who or who can be even stuck in, yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been sitting with it. I've been meditating on it. But there's not as much action that's happening. So really the goal is to have that balance.
Right. And with having that balance, I love that you say that because I think so many times we feel we need to do one or the other
Yeah.
and having the polarity of both. So showing up for this. So I know for me growing up, certain things for me, my parents or, role models or things or different stuff that I get, or I know I do something, I'm like, gosh, that's such a Deb, or oh, I get that, my Deb and Rob, Rob, different energies of that. Did that ever show up for you or, growing up of things, for me, it's funny because we get these patterns or we learn these things and um showing from different parents. My dad, he's so funny. He's very more, I feel, on my mom and sister are alike, and my dad and I are alike. And so showing up for that is funny because sometimes I think that's more like, oh, that should have been mom's role or mom or dad. And there really isn't. And talking about having both sides of that feminine and masculine and who I am as today has shown up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see that some in my parents, and I definitely see that in our nuclear family dynamic now,
Yeah,
where
definitely.
their dad is the one who's always been the one to put hot food on the table for dinner.
I love it.
And so I think he's the one who, if they outgrow their shoes, he buys them new shoes.
Oh, I
I
love
feel
it.
like I really love being the parent who's the fun parent. I like to go on adventures with them, and I like to play games with them, and pull out the art supplies and schedule play dates. So from an early age, they both have interchangeably called us mom and dad. They mix it up all the time, which I think is really fascinating. And there's some part of me that feels pride about that. I
Yeah.
like that we're not sticking in these boxes of what's expected.
Yeah, maybe we can elaborate on that a little bit more, with also raising your kids and things like that, of not putting them in a box and allowing them to have both sides of that polarity to show up for, maybe you can help some others who are raising the kids in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a story actually last night. This is, I think, more masculine energy. My little one has always kind of, when she was little, she was the one we were worried would jump off a couch and hurt herself because she had a lot of physical energy. And last night she came home and she said, it's really upsetting me. There's a lot of trash around the tables where we eat at school, and I don't like it. It's gross. I'm thinking I might want to email the garden teacher with some ideas.
That is amazing.
So I pulled out the computer. I was like, tell me what to type. I'll type it. She had like 4 or 5 really, I'm a little biased, but really good ideas about how to motivate people to create a culture of picking up after yourself
I
and
love
having pride in the school to do that. And the
and I
garden teacher wrote her right back and said, what great ideas. Let's bring them to the principal tomorrow. And she felt so good. But that was that kind of classic, if you see something wrong, go do something about it. I would
Yeah.
say more masculine
Yes.
energy.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that at such a young age that she recognizes that. And
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with mom and dad. Yeah, Todd too. Woo, woo. A little shout out. I think that has a lot to do with it, like showing an example for what, taking a stand. If something doesn't feel right, use your voice. And I love that she isn't afraid to use her voice and take a stand, because
Yes.
I feel that's what you encompass. Like that's what, the world should know. Like you take that stand, you show up for your clients, you show up on the deeper soul level. And I think that's what stands out about you, is that you get what you get online and offline, because you don't just talk the talk, you talk the talk and walk the walk as well.
Thank you. That means so much to hear you say that, because when I first got into coaching, I remember thinking, who am I to be a life coach? I've got plenty of my own stuff. But then I realized if I'm walking the talk, if I'm on the receiving end of stuff, which I love being the client, then sure, I can support other people to do that too. It just took the pressure off.
Right.
The goal is not to become this perfect person. No one is perfect. And if we were, how boring. I had this mentor talk about, she's like, have you ever seen someone who's perfect? It's terrifying.
It really is. Because if we're perfect, then like, what do we have to look for? You got to learn from your goods, bads, like all around. And I think so many times, what I love about you is it's so authentic. And we want that authenticity, because sometimes we think we're the coach, we're this, we know it all. Or,
Yeah.
people come to us thinking we know it all. And what I love is, like you said, like, I've gone to help, I've gone to coaching, and I've done that. So showing up for yourself, how does that help you better be who you are, by not just, getting coaches or doing stuff? Would you recommend that to someone who is a coach, to
Oh
go
my
through
gosh,
something
yes.
and not put on the, thing? What could you give someone advice on that?
I think it very much depends on the person, but I do think if you're on the receiving end of things, you do come to the job with a totally different perspective. And you
Yeah.
can relate to the client more because you're also a work in admitting that you're a work in progress and that you haven't arrived to some fictitious place.
Yeah. I love how you say that. Maybe we can extend a little bit more of arriving to where we're at. No one's perfect, and putting in that energy and showing up. What are some things that you do or with your clients, or that someone can kind of work with you to explore and get on that path?
Yeah. Um, I have noticed that a lot of people come my way when life and work they're fine, but they know they could be way better. They're not
Mm,
feeling excited about things. They're not necessarily feeling like things are aligned.
mhm.
And so they wanna come to talk about Usually there's those deep philosophical questions like, who am I? What
Mhm.
do I want? And why am I here? That's
Mhm.
usually what we're getting to.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
yeah, it's fascinating and interesting because I like to imagine if more and more people know who they are, what they care about, why they're here, I just think it's really going to keep showing up in the world. I think there's a ripple effect there.
Yeah, I do too, and I think, well, you make people feel they have purpose. I think that's one of the biggest thing is, like, why are we here? What is our
Mhm.
purpose? And,
Mhm.
I think sometimes though, we're exploring the masculine part. When our purpose shows up, is it sometimes more like you think, I have to have this purpose and showing that masculine part, or I have to have this. How do you kind of work when you're showing up for yourself? As we said, we need a little bit of both together. Do you agree? Like, kind of coaching someone with like coming in like boom, 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 or this to soften or to put on your little big girl panties and,
Mhm.
gotta do boom.
So lately, I'm going to answer this one from my own perspective of what I've been going through lately, because a lot of this, it also mirrors what's coming up in the sessions. Someone told me once, the people who find you are people who have your stuff.
And tell your story. I think that's the most beautiful thing, and thank you for that. You have really great stories, and I think someone sharing their story is able to relate. So thank you for being vulnerable to share your story with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Um, yeah, I think I've been told for my birthday every year, I get myself some sort of unique healing reading. And I love it. I love finding the most kind of obscure methods. And
Yes.
so someone, um, a few different people told me that I had masculine energy and that part of what I'm here for, which I was shocked to hear. I do
Yeah.
not see myself that way, but when they further explained it, I understood a little bit more about
Mhm.
feeling the need to achieve. And if I have an idea right away, try to execute on it and go, go, go. Um, and they said part of what you're here to learn is to lean who you are at your most powerful is you leaning into your feminine energy of
Yeah.
really leaning back and receiving. So lately, I'm about 10 years into coaching. I love the one-on-one, but lately I've been thinking, I want to do something else. I want something new. I want something to complement it. And so I went to this place of, oh my gosh, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to figure it out. I could do
Yeah.
this, I could do this, I could do this. And then finally I paused and pulled back and said, let me zoom way out. What if I'm just aware that I am hungry to do something else? And I lean into that energy, but I don't feel the need to do something about it right away. I can let the ideas come to me. And that felt really foreign. I think that's more feminine energy. Let it come to you. Let
Yes.
them flow.
Mhm.
Someone mentioned the image of like a queen sitting on a throne, like just let it come to you.
Yes, I like
So
that.
I'm experimenting with that and it's hard. It's not what we see when we look around us. That's not really our culture.
Right. And I like how you said it isn't. So I think what we see in the movies, what we see this. So then we tend to compare like, oh, I need to look like this. But what I love and go back to a word that you use is aware. I
Mhm,
really wanted to kind of highlight on that because I don't think we're always aware of what's going on. And then we put that blame like, oh, I'm not following this way. I'm not, there's no good, bad, wrong, or right. But what I love that you said is being aware of what's
mhm,
going on and showing up with that consciousness.
mhm.
Definitely
I'm
with that.
curious, how does it show up for you?
So I kind of feel like that too. I think I love my mom and everything, but I think my whole life it's like we're going, we have plans. You're this, you're that, slowing down. And sometimes like, in my relationship, with my fiance, sometimes he's like, Elena, why do you always have to have everything all planned out every weekend? Da, da, da. And I was like, oh, I do, taking on kind of that. And it's not a bad thing, but slowing my role back and kind of being like, let it flow. Like, we don't have to have everything scheduled for this weekend. We don't have to go boom, 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 go, go, go to be successful. So I think sometimes it shows up for me because I feel that I have to constantly go and accomplish and show up and do, but I need to be a little softer. And I've always thought with the feminine, like, I love the bright colors. I love getting my hair done. Like, you think like, oh, I'm so feminine. And then when it comes to this, it's really funny because exactly too, I've been told a little bit too that I've been a little bit more masculine. And I was like, what? Like, but I like all these other things. So I think sometimes what we think is going to happen is a total different thing, and to show up a little differently with ourselves.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know.
what do you think it would be like if you were to slow down or soften a little bit?
I think it would be like actually really lovely, because I think sometimes having so much to do and always showing up gets a lot, and I think taking that time for ourselves. And, I think it's like society too, as we see, we have to have it. On paper, it's A, B, and C, but in reality, it could be whatever we want. So authentically, what feels good for me, and
Mhm.
how can we show up? Oh, so my dad pops in, dad and mom, because, well, this is only dad right now. He says, we have not been able to listen all the time, but this subject is so important in knowing who you are in life and being confident in maneuvering all aspects of life. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. And you've been such a great mentor in my aspects of life. So I appreciate you. Is there any other things that are coming up like that people can work with you? What is the best way, if someone wants to work with you one-on-one, or say there's like a group of women, and they're having a women's night and they want just like some more fun and just engaging. Do you ever go to groups? And, I would love for you to, kind of share more of your gifts of how people can work with you or how you show up for others.
Thank you. The one-on-one have done since day one. I imagine myself doing that as long as I possibly can. I love it. It's so vulnerable and deep and connected. I would say maybe 7 years ago, I did my first women's retreat. I facilitated a women's retreat. And we got a house and someone came and cooked for us, and it had a yoga teacher and did a lot of group coaching. And that was really fascinating. I actually had a client come who I'd worked with one-on-one. A couple of years later, she came to the retreat. She said, this is just apples and oranges. It's so different to work one-on-one versus in a group. Because
Yeah.
in a group, you're also learning so much from the other people there. So I've done now 3 women's retreats. And just recently, I've thought about the idea of doing this is a very new idea. So I'm gonna break it out here. So I've thought about doing a something called mom camp. I
Ooh.
always get jealous of my kids when they get to go to camp. I'm like, I want
Yes.
to go to camp. I loved camp. Where is that for adults? So
Right.
what I'm picturing is a similar retreat house, but just going for like 3 days in a row. And a lot of it is, I imagine it being for moms of young kids, because I think it's so easy to lose yourself in that role. It
Yeah.
becomes all about the kids, all about everyone else. And I think that's femininity to the to the unhealthy extreme, is
Uh-huh.
completely forgetting about yourself. It's not
Right.
good for you, not good for anyone else.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea of women gathering and having those conversations. Not talking about the logistics of being a mom, because I yawn. I went to some of those groups when my kids were little. I was like, this is so boring. But really getting into the gist of like, no, who are you? What are you desiring? What are you needing? And doing that as a group. I think especially in this world we're in, which is um
A lot.
really seems like it's threatened by the feminine. A lot of
Yes.
the like overarching governmental structures seemed threatened by so I think all the more reason to gather together and to feel the beauty of it and the strength of it.
I love that. The strength, the beauty, and what you're saying is like not your typical like mom. I can't personally relate because I don't have kids and I am an auntie to show
Yeah.
up, but I know even in a relationship, you have to take care of yourself
Yeah.
first. And
Yes.
no matter if I'm coach this, that, no matter what I'm going through, I have to, put on a different energy and show up as well. And so I love that about the mom camp, because then it sounds like you can be free. It's so much fun.
Yes.
Like we always want to do, sometimes what our kids do and we don't get to do, we need to live more as a kid in that
Yes.
more joy and fun. And so I think that gets taken away when we have to take on that role of, I got to be a mom. I got to be this. I got to be,
That was actually, it was something I learned at the women's retreat 2 times ago, where I go into these retreats and I'm all kind of emo. Like I'm expecting like, what depths can we get into? Where are our shadows? What are we not saying? And the house was right on a beach, and we went to the beach, and these women started doing cartwheels and handstands. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, that's not how I came into this. That's not what I was expecting. But yes, we need that. We need that kind of levity and that upness and the play, the
Right.
joy.
Yeah. I think that gets taken away. And with exploring the feminine, that energy of like, you can't do this, or, putting in a box of how to show up. You're going to be at a retreat and you got to, da, 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 da. But I think we're all craving that joyful little kid in us to be seen, to want to, get up, or like, even what I love, like I saw, I think something that you had said, like dancing more in the morning, getting up and dancing, and you put on that. I love that too. So this morning I texted Annie before we got on here, and I was like, I just did a little shimmy shake. And then she said, I did too, I love that, and showing up for others. And what I really love about you is when you say that you're going to show up, you do. And I think a lot of times in these coaching things and showing up, we have an expectation of someone, or we think that once again, they know it all. Mm-hmm. But in this, I love that you're still exploring. I love that you're still putting yourself out there, and more people need to be vulnerable like that of, and coaching. We don't know it all, but you're here to guide them.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. The one other thing I'm looking to do more of, last year, a previous one-on-one client invited me. She worked for a tech company, and they were having this offsite. And she said, I want to do an evening just for the women, because there's not many women at this tech company in tech, period. Yeah. And they did a few other things, and then she rented this house, and I got to come and do, I think it was 2.5 hours of group coaching. And we talked a lot about like, what are some of your fears at work? What's it like being a woman at work? In coaching, we do this thing called character work, where you build out different aspects of yourself into these characters, kind of like the movie Inside Out, Pixar.
Yeah.
And then you get to channel them. And so all of the women there found a character that they really want to access at work. And that was really, and then they introduced their characters, and because they're working together, they can be able to see each other and see if they're doing that and support each other in it. So I'd love to do more of that, kind of come to existing groups.
I think that would be really great. And so anybody who's watching this, if you guys would love Annie to ever come to your group, she is the one to do it. And I think that's so beautiful, because I think so many times think it's just one-on-one and this, and for you to show up for others, I think that's what is needed, and someone who they already have the group, but what do we do with the group? How do we get, to guide, them that way? So
could be a group of friends, could be a team at work, right? Any of it.
That's really, really good. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here, and I just want to thank you so much for being on here today. And anybody who would like to work with Annie, here's the information up here: annienogg@gmail.com, www.annienoggcoaching.com. And this will be on a replay, so it will be here forever.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I really appreciate you inviting me onto your show.
I'm so glad that you can be here. I'm Elana with Your Health Vibes with Elana, bi-weekly at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, raising your vibration, heart, body, mind, and soul. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm Elana with WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio TV Podcast, #1 Internet Singles Talk Network. Your Health Vibes with Elana. Thank you for being here. Love you, everyone. Bye for now.